Folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, and this has been, if you like, I've been inspired to do this by a story in, I think it was in Canada, or certainly North America, where bullying has reached a point in a certain high school where there were teacher walkouts. Students and teachers are being assaulted by the bullies, and the school and the education authorities don't seem to know what to do. The education being so politicized as it is, so given they seem completely unable to know what to do, then we can safely assess that the bullies are all non-white. So I'm sure if it was white boys, they'd be swiftly swinging into action and having anti-Nazi classes or something like that. But because of the multicultural, now we've got one of these high schools, and there were a few that I sort of did a little bit of research on. Due to the mass migration, they went from being all white into suddenly being very multicultural, and then the bullying and the drama seems to start around that time. So. Now, I've got a sort of bit of an insight into this because I moved to many schools as a kid, and the folks moving around and everything. So I went to a number of schools where there was a very sharp class divide between really down at heel working class people, and then in another situation for a fairly brief time, a very multicultural school where white people were in the minority. So, and then an all-white, an upper middle class all-white school. So having a look at those differences in bullying, respect for teachers, respect for authority, respect for adults, and also the thug-like behaviour. So just having a look at this. This is going back to the 70s, 1970s. This has been all over the. I think it's been around everywhere where there's been a multicultural situation, and there's a number of things that I think stand out. So let me talk about those and talk about what I think the causes of. The bullying and trying to have punch-ups with teachers. Now, in a multicultural school I went to, thank God not for long, I'd never been in a really sort of a multicultural school before, and well, certainly nowhere near to this extent. And if it was the kids of fairly well-to-do type people, so everyone was well behaved and all that sort of thing. But this is quite different. We've got a number of peasants, coming from third world countries where the parents were illiterate in their own language, and the refugees, say the Lebanese Civil War, things like that. And they tend to coalesce around, migrant hostels that they had in Australia at the time. So there happened to be a migrant hostel, or a couple of them, quite nearby with a catchment area for this school district. Therefore, there was a serious overrepresentation of these sort of people. Now, given, and we're talking Middle East, so we're talking. There was some political unrest. I think it was in Malta. So there was a number of Maltese. There was. Arabic people, Lebanese, and others. Not that many black people, more brown, dark brown in some cases. Anyway, that was the and pretty much not every single one, but certainly of the troublemakers, the majority were the brown people, and the sort of things they did as well, and. In terms of just sort of street level or playground level bullying, Irish migrants were probably the biggest issue there, the biggest problem there. And some of them had been pretty much expelled from Ireland, saying, look, you're going to end up in prison, or you can go to Australia, which is it? And in those days, they kind of offered those options to say, well, if you go into a different environment, maybe you won't be such a hoodlum. So those things were going on, and And I remember some of these guys were huge as far as I recall. But the main troublemakers across the board were the brown kids, and they were the ones who were least likely to accept authority and the most likely to have punch-ups with the teachers. The Irish kids, the Irish boys, to some extent would, but you could see the defiance there. But beating up teachers was kind of just a step too far for most of them, but not for the brown kids. There's a few things that went into this. Firstly, is the brown kids came from tribal societies where the village elder or the tribal elder or the local imam, religious leader was really the authority, and they had no concept of authority in a social system. They had no concept of authority outside of this. So the tribal elders and this sort of thing. So the only penalty that they could be given was excommunication from the family or the tribe. So when they come to a place like Australia, where authority is vested in our institutions rather than our tribes, then they've got no concept of how to relate to that. And so that was number one I noticed there, and have noticed it subsequently. And again, traveling around the world in business, you kind of see it there as well. So they had no concept, teachers having authority or any institution, police or courts, that they just can't come at that. They just don't, no, the village elder has that authority. Why are you trying to usurp? So you're in effect, by saying that you have to respect and abide by the laws of the institutions and codified law, you're almost disrespecting their family and their tribe and their imam and all this. So they see it as actually not simply a confusing situation, because in their society, they have no institutions. They have no strong institutions that people place their trust in. So when, and the second thing was that they see property and things as being communally owned. So they will share their things. So they think that anything they want, you must share with them. So they have a much more communal ownership type of thing, coming from their little rural villages and that sort of stuff. The idea is that you share what you have, and they don't understand private property in the way that the West does. So when a kid would get something from the school canteen, it could be something to eat for lunch, whatever. The brown kids, the Lebanese, the Arab, particularly the Arabic kids, were really bad for this. They would sort of hang around in gangs, and they would try and steal your lunch. Now they would say things like, they would have, I don't know, a piece of cucumber or something that was all, was all sort of all dry and all fucked up, and they would offer you that, and they say, well, that, because I offered you that piece of inedible cucumber or fruit or vegetable, whatever, I offered you something that's inevitable, that moldy green sandwich, because I offered you that, you then are obligated to give me what you've just got for lunch at the school canteen. So that was the mentality they applied. Well, I was going to share what I had with you, but what I've got's fresh and ready to eat. What you had was moldy and shitty. Why would I share that? But that's the sort of the frame of reference they applied. So they had two things: no respect for authority, and you should share what you have, and what you have is for the community, communally. So I can take whatever I want. So, and then I've mentioned this in previous videos, but in say the case of the medical cabinet in the carpentry room, which is in first year high school, was compulsory, I think, carpentry or woodworking, I think they called it. And so there's this Arabic kid. He just spots the medical cabinet, which is usually in a locked room, but the teacher's forgotten to lock it, and just goes in there and just starts stuffing his pockets full of whatever's in almost mindlessly, like whatever's in there. Like he almost doesn't know what he's stuffing. But the teacher comes in and catches him and says, "Put it back." And the kid just turns around and slugs the teacher, and the teacher and the kid are having a punch up. Another Arab kid joins in, and this was not unusual. It didn't happen every day, but it wasn't unusual. Now, in other things, a bunch of Arab kids held a white kid down and then tried to torture him with burning his leg with a magnifying glass, using the sunlight to burn the kid's leg. Another time they tried to hang a, as in, putting a noose around his neck and hanging him off the parallel bars in the playground. And these sort of things, police were around like all the fucking time. These kids were getting punished and caned, and there were these public canings. And this was the sort of environment I remember as a kid, I was quite shocked by this. But also it was the sort of things that they did for entertainment. And I mentioned this in previous videos. The Arabic kids would say in the sports change room, they would drop a big shit in the middle of the change room. It's big turd thing. And then they would try and grab kids, white kids, try and grab kids as they came unwittingly into the change room, grab them and push them into the turd. And if they succeeded in doing it, it was an occasion of raucous merriment. And look what we've done. And they would see it as somehow some sort of great achievement. Other things they did, and a lot of them seemed to have respiratory problems. They would hack up a good chunk of green and then spit it onto kids as they were sort of going upstairs or around corners or something like that. So it would land on their back, and then that would be a huge achievement, seeing this big greenie sort of hanging on someone's back and on their clothes, and again they would see that as something, or they would say kids in summer would bring drink bottles to school, and they would discover these and open up the kid's bag, get the drink bottle, and they'd all hack in it and then put it back into the kid's bag. And they liked doing that. Though it wasn't just that they did it, but they looked for those sort of opportunities and enjoyed doing it. And this was something I couldn't sort of understand. How very strange. Now, in terms of the bullying in the playground, the kids' playground, I was just thinking about, I don't know, it was, I wasn't a recipient of it all the time, but you kind of had to watch out. There were areas where they would sort of say, this is our area or our domain or our territory. And if you would try to walk through it or come too close to it, they would treat that as if you're challenging their ownership of that part of the hood or something like that. And so a couple of them would be dispatched to beat you up. If they would often, they certainly didn't believe in fighting fair, that's for sure. They would say they would, hey mate, I want to fight you, be that sort of thing that was quite prevalent in that sort of area. And so if you did turn up, they would be there with all their buddies and cronies, and they'd come up behind you and spit on you and kick you and that sort of thing while you're trying to fight one of their number. So those sorts of things. Again, a very, very Arabic sort of take on things that but equally you see that sort of thing in say where from the black people from Africa or any tribal type society that's like that, where the authority and the trust is not vested in institutions, it's vested in the tribe and the village elder. You see it from the islanders around the Pacific and so on. So it's a very special sort of, a very unique society where they vest the trust in the institutions and trust those institutions to deliver impartially to everybody and everybody equally. But in those societies that are really homogenous, they don't happen outside of that. So in that sense, multiculturalism sort of fails quite substantially. Now, back in the day, the authorities took the view that most of the brown people were troublemakers and that severe measures had to be taken. They had to be punished, given detention, told that they expelled from school. They would get a few weeks in some sort of reform school that they had there. It wasn't like a children's prison or Borstal or anything. It was like some sort of reform school where they would try and get you to mend your ways. A lot of those brown kids were sent there. Now then going to a school or before that to a school where it was pretty much all white, but there was a sharp class divide. There was a large government housing project in the area, in the catchment area for the school. There's also quite an upper middle class area, and there was reasonable class tension there, I recall. The pretty much all the troublemakers were the kids from the government housing project, and they were the bullies and the thugs. I mean, this was a younger age there, but the ones from the middle class families were quite well behaved and couldn't seem to comprehend why these people wanted to be so violent and cruel and looking for trouble. And I remember I was bewildered as well, but again, it was an all white. Then moving to an all white upper middle class area where all the kids were white and all were upper class. It was an expensive area to live, and much you'd get standouts. Whereas there were multiple fights in the school playground every day in the multicultural school, and you could guarantee it wasn't the brown kids; it was the Irish kids. You guarantee that, but there was every day it was, and multiple times a day, and again, police come around every day. And then moving to the upper middle class high school, where if there was even a playground fight once a month, that would be it. I don't think the police ever came around. And the difference in respect for institutions and parents was 100%. And then the multicultural school, I'm going to tell your parents what you've done. Well, they don't even speak English anyway, and why don't you get fucked? So that would be the thing. And why should they take any notice of you white, your white boy? Whereas in the upper middle class school, completely different. All the teacher had to do is say something like, do we have your father's work number, phone number, and that would end anything. The whole class would suddenly go into absolute silence. You'd hear a pin drop. Any kid who heard that, who was being a little bit difficult, would suddenly shut up and no, I'm not going to create any problem. That's all you had to say. Do we have your father's work phone number? And I mentioned this to a teacher in a very multicultural school just recently, and the teacher laughed and said, if I said that to the kids, and I said, do we have your father's work? He'd say, which father? I haven't got a father. Won't you fuck off? So different times, but in the all homogenous upper class area, there was still widespread respect for institutions, respect for parents, respect for authority, respect for teacher and parental authority, and these sorts of things. And students would typically, they had sufficient social skills, one assumes, learnt from their parents in the environment where conflict was navigated by discussion and talking about it. It wasn't I'm going to fucking kill you, motherfucker. It was completely different. So those are the range. But wherever you see this multicultural, particularly from tribal societies without the institutions and that don't understand how institutions work and have no comprehension of it, and where they've arrived in the West thinking, look at all you have, why won't you share it with us? If you won't share it, we'll take it from you. And in addition, they're being told through the education system that white people are all bad and that white government, white society, white everything is completely illegitimate because it's so bad. And so they've got no need to invest in the social trust in our institutions. And I think this is where the bullying comes from. But in addition to that, now there aren't the remedial measures that there were. In some of these schools, the bullying occasioning hospitalisation of the kid, and that'll involve 1 or 2 days suspension. Whereas, it would involve police and serious response. They used to. There was one kid used to get six cuts of the cane. This is on the hand. 6 cuts of the cane a day for a week for some of the things they did. But those things don't exist anymore. So not only is it out of control, and mass migration's worse than ever before from the people who come from areas where there is no respect or even understanding of institutions or independent law or independent authority, that authority outside of their own community or tribe or family. So this is part of the thing, and this is where we're at now. So I don't know. I would perceive on this basis that the bullying is going to get a whole lot worse and more widespread. and this is the, you know, if you're amongst the poorer white people in the Western communities, your lot now and in the future is not good, and it's going to get worse. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.